We're here in Riverside, California, talking with a gentleman with quite a background in the field of motorcycles, motorcycle racing. Malcolm Smith is joining us today. Malcolm, a lot of our folks here probably have ridden a motorcycle, maybe some maybe still do. When did you start riding two-wheel machines?
I started riding two-wheel Lambretta motor scooter when I was 13 years old in the north end of San Bernardino.
And when did you then progress to racing motorcycles?
Wow. In those days, Southern California, which it still is, there's a lot of motorcycle racing going on. So people had their practice tracks all over. And I would go out and I would ride around the practice tracks when nobody was there. And then one day I got enough nerve to ride around when they were riding, and I was faster than all of them. And I said, boy, I found my calling. So a few weeks later, went out to a race in the Badlands and raced a motorcycle.
Mm-hmm. You've raced all over the world. You've been in the Paris-Dakar Rally. You've raced Baja a number of times, international six-day trials, won numerous times in that as well. Where in the world was maybe the most unusual or exotic place that you've raced?
I think the roof of Africa. It's a black-ruled country right in the middle of South Africa. It's high mountains, like 11,000-foot peaks ring it, and it's still going now, a three-day off-road race there. Real rough, tough, rugged race.
A lot of people like to watch sports on TV, but some people, sort of the Walter Mitty complex, think they might like to try some of these things. I understand that for experienced motorcycle riders, you provide that opportunity in Baja with a special program that you've developed over the years.
Well, we do, but the courses we use, they have to be an experienced rider in good physical condition, and we do one 7-day trip every year that supports an orphanage in Mexico. And we start from the border and ride to Cabo and go about 1,500 miles. We go back and forth across the peninsula. Occasionally on the Baja 1,000 race course,
right,
but most of the time more primitive roads than that.
You mentioned the orphanage in Baja, and I know you've gotten a love for the people as well as the country. You and your wife have gotten involved with a program down there helping young people, not just as little kids, but even if on into college if they're doing well in school.
Yes. I mean, if you break down in the middle of Baja, the American guy in his car, 2 or 3 will drive by you. The first Mexican in the car will stop and offer to help. And that's how they are. I mean, I've been broken down on a motorcycle there, walk to a rancho, and they'll feed me dinner and find me a place to sleep. Wonderful people. And there was an orphanage starting in Valley Trinidad. It's in the mountains between Ensenada and San Felipe. And we got involved 19 years ago, and we helped build the facility there. And there's about 50 children. And when they became 18, they were out with no real future other than a laborer's job or something. So if they have good high school grades, we'll send them to University in mainland Mexico and pay the room and board, give them a stipend, and put them through college. And in Mexico, a college education is a big deal.
So this is a great program, and you've also helped some of the kids with health problems and issues, and even brought them up here for surgeries in some situations as well. So the love of Mexico is there. In fact, you have a home down there that you enjoy from time to time.
On the beach on Gonzaga Bay, and wonderful place. There'll be 500 dolphins in the bay some morning.
Well, we talked about some of the racing that you've done over the years, and as our viewers may be aware, we're going to be showing a film on Channel 6 on December 17th called On Any Sunday. And among the people in the movie is Mr. Malcolm Smith. How did you get involved with Bruce Brown and Steve McQueen making this movie?
Well, I worked on Bruce's motorcycles. He lived in Dana Point, and he would bring them up here, and I'd work on them for him. I worked on some of Steve McQueen's bikes, too. And Bruce said he was going to make a motorcycle movie like Endless Summer. And I thought, boy, that would be great. And he said, are you interested in being part of it? And I said, absolutely. Well, about a year later, it was time to make the movie, and he called me and said, well, we're going to make the movie. I said, Bruce, I'm sorry, I only owned the service department of the motorcycle store then, and one of the other owners wanted to start K&N air filters, and the other owner wanted to go to Tulsa, Oklahoma and start a motorcycle store. So I bought them out, and I said, I'm overwhelmed. This is way too much for me financially, and I have to stay and watch the business.
Right.
He said, well, it'll be a couple weeks before we start filming. And he said, I'll ask you again. So he called me again. And I said, yeah, Bruce, I'm pretty well caught up. I think I can do it. It's the best decision I ever made. I mean, the movie and Bruce's depiction of me gave me $1 million worth of publicity.
You're on, I believe, your fourth facility here in the Riverside area. Over the years, you've built and expanded. Now you're involved in not just racing motorcycles, but you sell street motorcycles. I believe you're selling watercraft and some four-wheel things and all kinds of devices that have evolved from the motorcycle. When you started as a young man back in the 50s racing, did you ever envision how motorcycles would blossom as to an industry?
No, I didn't, and I was in college to be an aircraft engineer. I dropped out of college in my third year to go to work in a motorcycle dealership. My parents hit the roof. My mother was a teacher. She said, you're going to starve to death. My mother, until the movie came out, my mother never admitted her son raced or rode motorcycle. The movie came out, and then it was my son, the motorcycle racer.
Right. We see in the movie, we see you participating in a variety of types of things. The Elsinore race through the town and through fields and mud holes and all of that. We see you racing and off-road, the Mint and some of those Las Vegas races and the desert races. But we also see you do something that was at that time, I think, somewhat new for you, and that was hill climbing. Now, we think of hill climbing as specialized, big cubic inch Harley-Davidsons, long wheelbases. You show up in a fairly stock motocross bike. How did that go down?
It wasn't fairly stock. It was absolutely stock. The original tire was still on it, everything. And it was the point of the mountain by Salt Lake City in Utah. And I had actually at Saddleback Park one time when they opened Saddleback the first year, they put an ad in Cycle News. They were going to cut, they had a big hill that was called the Matterhorn, and they had a bulldozer that was going to cut down the face in the morning. And the first person over it got $100 cash. That was a lot of money in the 69
Sure.
or something. And the bulldozer cut the hill down. I followed the bulldozer down to the bottom where he stopped. I turned around and went right back up the hill, shot over the top. No one, including myself, made it up the hill the rest of the day.
Just takes once.
Yeah, the one time, $100. But then I think that was the only hill climb before the one in Salt Lake City.
In the movie, the one we see in the movie. At the end of the movie, there's a kind of a nice scene with some great music, and you're doing some riding with a couple of other fellas, one of them being Steve McQueen. And some of that was actually done nearby here, nearby where we are in Laguna Woods, down at what is now Camp Pendleton Marine Base.
It was Camp Pendleton Marine Base then, too.
And I understand that somebody had to call the colonel up and see if you guys could get permission. Mr. Brown called him up, and what was the answer?
Well, Bruce called the commanding officer up, and he said, absolutely no motorcycles on my Marine base. And about 2 hours later, Steve McQueen got there because we were going to do 3 days of filming. He called up and said who he was, and the colonel talked to him for a while, and he said, what would you like? Steve told him, the same thing Bruce had told me. Absolutely, Mr. McQueen. We'll be out there to help you, whatever we can do for you.
That's great. That's a good story indeed. We've seen motocross racing evolve and motorcycle racing evolve. We're seeing now stadium motocross. Back in your starting off anyway, it was an outdoor sport. Now it's done in big stadiums with temporary dirt pulled in from all over the place. big jumps, fireworks, flames, fire. A little different than when you raced motocross.
Yeah, absolutely. Now the top guys are making $1 million or $2 million a year, and there's 60,000 people viewing it in person there, plus a lot of people watching it on television. And there's a whole series all over the country in different stadiums.
Mm-hmm.
And then it usually ends toward the end of spring and the outdoor season starts, where it's the traditional motocross race.
Yeah. Do you still have time to ride today at all?
Yes, I ride. Not as fast as I used to, but we still ride to Baja.
And you lead that group through Baja on the tour every year as well.
Yes.
Sometimes you're involved in that as well.
Yeah, I'm always involved in that.
That's great. That's great. Thank you so much for your time. We'll look forward to watching you from a few years ago and on any Sunday too. It's good to meet you. The movie will be shown here on Channel 6, and that's coming up on December 17th, one of our final films for 2012, On Any Sunday. And you'll be seeing Steve McQueen, Malcolm Smith, and lots of other great motorcycle racers in a great documentary film.